Is someone you love missing? You usually hear from them, but you haven't? You feel like something is wrong? As scary as this must be, please know that you are not alone. Sadly, too many Indigenous families have a missing loved one. While every experience is unique and circumstances differ, we have compiled the experiences of some community members. We hope it will help you to take some action and be better equipped to navigate the system.
Trust your gut immediately. If you really believe that they're missing, contact everyone. Your community, your family, your leadership, the police.
Talking to RCMP right away, trying to go through all their contacts of the missing person and finding out who they had contact with last and when and where and times, and having those people forward that information to RCMP. And if the RCMP aren't listening, then you need to bang on their doors and occupy those spaces every day to push the case forward.
We get told a lot as Indigenous peoples and young people that there's something wrong with us or that we're the problem, but often our instincts are accurate and they do tell us when something's wrong, when something's off, and when we need to act.
When people go missing, you have that time period where if you don't act upon it, then there's a chance that you won't ever find them.
If you're going to the police and they're saying that you need to wait longer or that they don't have enough information, start building your team of support yourself. Start reaching out to people that you trust and to maybe mutual acquaintances or friends of the person that you're concerned about also trusts, and get some information, where they were last seen, what was their last encounter like, who were they last seen with.
Educate yourself about what an advocate can bring to the process. Somebody in the family should appoint a spokesperson and constantly be badgering the police, because they're not going to take this seriously unless you do.
Many families do not get the help they need from police. Many encounter racism and stereotyping of their loved ones, are brushed off and made to feel like they don't matter.
The police are one avenue, right? We're often told, and we see in the media so much, that they're the only answer, but they're not. Your family, your friends, your extended relatives, anybody that you're connected to or that you're in community with, those are also options. Those are also people that we can go to for support.
We contacted everyone that we knew in my cousin's circle. We did our own investigation along with RCMP, and anytime we found critical information, we would ask those people to come forward and make statements. And we would follow up with RCMP and ensure that they had those contacts and they had that information.
You should know that police and RCMP will not share details with you or the public in order to not jeopardize the investigation. Aside from working with the police, here are some concrete steps you can take with the help of community right away.
Make a poster with a picture of your loved one in a really casual setting that looks where they look happy and relaxed and laughing, because that's how a lot of people will remember your loved one. Put them in places where your loved one was last seen. That really helps.
For those whose loved ones are trans or two-spirited, use photos that are the photos that the people would actually use of themselves, and to try and honor the gender that they self-identify as. Sometimes that can be hard for family members because you think of your child as a girl, for instance, and they may identify as he. So this is a time to acknowledge and honor the pronouns that they use.
Social media like Facebook and Twitter is another way you can get the word out.
Find a person that has a large following and ask them to tweet the picture. Ask them to put it up on Facebook. Ask your friends and family to share the information, and most importantly, a contact number with the family so any information can be channeled through to you and not necessarily to the police, because the police may not pass that information on to you and you may need to pass it on to them.
You can also approach newspapers, radio, and television in order to get the word out. It's important to have a strategy before you do.
Appoint a spokesperson. That person should be seen to be kind of consistent through all of the stuff that goes into television, radio, and other forms of broadcast. Somebody who's fairly articulate, who's not afraid of the camera and the glaring lights, and is able to represent the family and can say things to the media and directly address not only your loved one, but whoever may have taken them.
It can be devastating when reporters talk about your missing loved one in negative ways. This is a risk you need to be aware of, and a good reason to tell the story yourself as much as you can.
We don't always have control about how information gets spread, so really think carefully about the kind of information that you want out there about the person you care about.
When my relative went missing, they suspected that she was out partying, and that's what they reported in the media, that hopefully she was just out partying and would come home soon. Even the community members, they kind of took a step back from looking for her because they believed in that stereotype, and that stereotype is getting reinforced within social media, within the police system, within our communities, and we really need to stop reinforcing those images of our women and understand that when they don't contact somebody, especially when they're in contact with somebody every day, that something's wrong.
Community members who use substances, who trade sex, or are street involved are entitled to human rights, fair process, safety, and respect.
Keep pushing, being aware of what media is looking for. Sometimes it can be very sensationalized, and that's all they're looking for. And being aware that your voice is very strong.
You want to make sure that you're telling them the same information and that everybody's on the same page about what they're doing and what's been going on. When they were last seen, what were they wearing, who were they with, what was their last encounter. Any information you can get, and establishing a timeline or figuring out what's been going on in their lives in the last 24 hours.
Having a physical presence and holding vigils for your loved one can be a powerful community action that can move the investigation forward.
We held a walk of faith that we would find her and that she would come back to us. And at that point, we thought she would come back to us safely. But during the walk of faith, we had media and the Aboriginal RCMP liaison accompany us. And that added pressure on those that committed the crime to come forward, because we walked in their neighborhood to ensure that they knew what we were doing and that they would be held accountable.
Too often families receive the most terrible news. They are contacted by police because their loved one has been found dead.
The first thing is to make sure that the supports are there, whether it's that spiritual help, the ceremonial help, whatever it is that helps them through that process.
I dropped the phone screaming and crying. It was a really horrible night that I will never forget, and had to tell my family that my sister had been found dead.
OPP came to my door. I didn't want to believe it. I fell to the ground.
Well, it's devastating.
I'm sure as any mother, I was refusing to believe him. I was calling him every name in the book because I hated him for what he was telling me.
Some of the police were pretty insensitive about what had happened to my sister.
The officer that I spoke to, he goes, "Do you know that she was a prostitute and she was on drugs and she jumped?" You know, I live that every day. I said, you don't have to say it that way. I said, I'm her mom. And he said, well, it is what it is. I had to hang up.
Stigma around actual or perceived sex work or drug use can lead to under-investigation and lack of effort in solving cases. Many murders of Indigenous people remain unsolved. The loved ones left behind struggle with unanswered questions and justice not served.
The thing about her passing was we really still don't have any details of what led to her falling over the balcony.
When that police officer told me that she was just a prostitute and on drugs, I just think, you know, she was nothing to them.
If you experience racism in your dealings with the police, you might want to use social or community media to make public how they treated you.
When the police are not being as responsive to your family's inquiries, and you don't think that they're investigating to the full abilities, let your displeasure be known. Get a hashtag. You could say find so-and-so or who killed your loved one as a hashtag and start tweeting them at the police, because the police don't like to be embarrassed. So in some cases, you've got to do everything at your disposal to get them to start looking.
And even when families work with police who practice due diligence, their investigation may not yield results. It was due to the efforts of her sister, who created an internet tribute, and not police, when 30 years after her murder, new leads arose in Sonia Sywing's case.
The detectives who are actually working on Sonia's case change about every 2 years. So I feel like I just established a relationship with the detectives, and they change. It's one of those things where you build a trust and then all of a sudden you have to start all over again.
When families are supported by police and the system overall, the stress relief is significant. Sadly, we don't often hear of families being treated this way.
We were really, I think, blessed in our experience. There was 2 police officers assigned to us during the whole investigation, which took 2 years. They visited us often. They gave us their private cell numbers. We could talk to them at any time. One was a woman.
Still, when a loved one is taken suddenly in a violent way, you will have to deal with trauma on top of grief. When the case is unsolved, it affects your ability to heal and let your loved one go. Younger siblings may take it the hardest. All of you will need a lot of support.
I was not wanting to believe. It took me probably 5 years to believe that this had really happened. Everything in my head screamed no for so many years.
When she passed, we all took it hard, and I can't even describe to you the things that have happened to us in the last 3 years. I wouldn't want anybody to go through what we went through, because my son is lucky to be alive.
My brother became suicidal. He was in and out of hospital and mental institution for the first year. It was really difficult for our family to make sure that he was okay, and also dealing with Bella's case and also dealing with our own grief. The grief comes and goes in waves. Try to reach out if you can to people that do support work for family members. It starts with us. No More Silence really helped me in knowing how to speak with police, speak with media, how to attain a lawyer, how to look for a private investigator. No More Silence put on vigils. My sister had passed away in Toronto, so we weren't able to be present at the place or where she was found dead. We weren't able to raise the alarm bell about my sister's death, but No More Silence and Starts With Us and Aboriginal Legal Services of Toronto were really helpful and pivotal.
If someone has been arrested and charged in the death of your loved one, there will be legal proceedings. The accused will stand trial and be sentenced if proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
When there is a murder, then it becomes a whole other system that's involved. It's that criminal legal system. The police are the front line. They gather the evidence. The Crown makes a decision of whether it's manslaughter, first degree or second degree murder. And then the accused is charged. They have first a bail hearing to determine whether he can get bail or not.
Bail is not usually granted on murder charges, and the accused is held in jail while being considered innocent until proven guilty. It can be years before the actual crime is tried. Families can observe that they have no legal standing.
The Crown doesn't represent the victim. The Crown represents society. So when you see the wording R versus the accused's last name. So R represents, Regina is the word they use, but it represents the Crown, the Queen. And so they represent the Queen, they represent society in general. They do not represent victims of crime. They do not represent families of victims. So they do not represent you.
Court processes are extremely awful. They can be very re-traumatizing. They can induce feelings of grief and crisis and loss all over again. So I really think preparing as much support as possible and deciding for yourself what components of a court process are important for you or for other family members to be engaged in. The important thing to think about is how are you getting information about which court dates are actually important to you for different reasons. Some of it may be logistical or maybe just formalities that the court has to go through about scheduling. Getting as much information as you can about what the purpose is for each date and then making an informed decision for yourself about when you would like to be there or when you just want someone to be there, some form of support.
Try and have somebody who is able to navigate those systems, someone who's knowledgeable about what a courtroom looks like or the protocols even of going into a courtroom.
When it came time for it to go to court, the two Crown prosecutors were so caring and so good with us. It was just so difficult just to be alive through that. But it's almost like it didn't really happen. But we went to court every day. We had friends with us every day in the courtroom, which made it easier.
Victim services are supposed to be available for families, but I don't always think that they understand the trauma that families are going through, and I don't think they always understand that families don't understand the language in the courtroom.
Because the fact that people are presumed innocent and have to be found guilty, it means that their defense is going to be based on ripping your loved one apart. Unfortunately, that's the way this justice system is set up. It's adversarial. So that means that they're going to utilize any crumb of knowledge that's negative about your loved one to their advantage, which is why you end up with, oh, she was just asking for it, or some implication that somehow your loved one was implicit in their own death. And that is really hard for a family to hear and have to listen to. And in the case where it's another community member who is at the heart of it and who is responsible for the murder, that is really hard because your community is going to start to get polarized.
One of the strategies that families have used is calls for court support. If there is a date that feels like it's meaningful, where they're actually discussing the case, where both the prosecution and the defense are going to be there, maybe the perpetrator is going to be there. If it's a public showing, you can ask people to be there in support, either outside or inside the courtroom, to make your presence known and to let people know, and especially the prosecution know, that community is watching. This isn't just another case that's going to get swept under the rug. That kind of public pressure and that kind of media attention can, and sometimes does, change the course of somebody's case.
Rally the community around you, whether that's through a spiritual and ceremonial aspect of how you gather your culture together. That's the number one thing. Finding out through ceremony how you're going to process this loss.
The things that we have found helpful is that we've been working diligently together to push the case forward. And we've been communicating and talking about what happened instead of hiding it or being ashamed of what somebody else did. It kind of re-marginalizes families a little bit more, where it becomes like a shameful thing where like, oh, my sister or my daughter or my relative went missing, and then there's that guilt there and that remorse. So I think just talking about that and sharing it with each other and sharing it with community, and it helps a little bit.
I always expressed my feelings whenever it would come up, right? I didn't hide it. And it doesn't matter whether I'm around somebody or in solitude. If I feel those feelings come out, I let them come out. And it seems like it's never ending. I sure miss her. I really miss her a lot. But one of the things that I do is I interact with young people at her age. And through them, I experience how she is, right? Because my relatives, if I have a niece, I go to her place. And she's standing by the sink. She looks just like my Bella.
Losing a friend or family member is an extremely stressful situation. Normal reactions can include disturbing symptoms such as these. If you are experiencing these symptoms, it is important to know that help is available and can provide relief. While things may feel out of control, remember that these are normal reactions to abnormal and extremely stressful situations. Look for people, places, or activities that help you feel safe. Try your best to take care of your body, even though this might be difficult. Find a health or mental health provider to assist you in your healing.
I think looking to culture has been really helpful. My family, they go and sweat, or they go to the water and they pray. And one of the things that we did during the walk of faith, as much as it was an act to let the general population know that she was missing, it was for us to do in prayer so that we could resolve within ourselves and with each other what occurred and that she was gone, and to have that connection to her spirit.
I've been doing quite a bit of ceremonies to help me through, and really trying to take care of myself, because despite everything that's happened, you still have to keep on going. The other thing would be in your belief system, right? That death is part of life and that we all are going to pass. I guess it's going home. She's beside our ancestors.
Ceremony helped him. I think Western society can only do so much. It was really our ceremonies that helped him, being home with family, feeling supported, and going to ceremonies to kind of rebalance and connect with the spirit world in that way, to not feel so disconnected from Bella and her death, because she still lives on.
How I began my healing journey was I began to feast my sister on a regular basis, and I learned to journal a lot more about her life and my relationship with her. So rather than allowing that to stay inside of my mind, I was able to actually share that on paper. So that's a record that I hope one day her grandchildren will be able to have, because they'll get to know another part of who she is.
Accessing inclusive ceremonial spaces may be a challenge if you are involved in street economies or sex work or fall outside the gender binary. Look for welcoming spaces that do not stigmatize you.
And also to try and include their friends in any kind of media statements or releases or things that are happening even around healing ceremonies, because often for trans and two-spirit people, their friends are like their biological family, and sometimes they get left out of searches or they get left out of any kind of healing practices that are happening.
Go for counseling, I would say. Do things to help you deal with the loss of your loved one. You're not alone. Sometimes I used to think it's like a different level of knowing, and other people that have lost loved ones, it's like you're in company, right? Because of the intensity of that loss.
I had a breakdown. I went into deep depression. I had to medicate. But when I see my grandson, Cheyenne's son, when I see him, I have a part of her.
My husband and I were lucky enough to be part of a support group for people who had lost a loved one through violence. And that support group helped us tremendously. It helped us bond with somebody else who had been through what we've been through, and gave us ideas on how to honor Ariana's memory and still move forward in our own lives. So we now have a tradition every January in Ariana's memory, we go and get a tattoo. And it's pretty special. It makes me feel good to know I'm doing something a little bit rebellious for somebody my age with my upbringing. And I know Ariana is looking down in joy that I'm doing something like that in her memory.
The first 6 months to a year, there's a lot of numbness and a lot of shock and pain. And after the first year, it continues, but it comes in waves and bouts. Now that we're in the third year, I'm finally looking at a bit of more of what healing is and how to become resilient in the pain and the anger and the sadness and the grief, that it comes in waves and some days are better than others.
If you are employed, you may be able to access monetary compensation for criminal injuries if you miss work.
You don't know how long this is going to take to have to go through not only the mourning process, but also dealing with the authorities, because you're going to have time off from work in order to talk to detectives, give over personal evidence, etc., and hopefully aid as much as you can in the investigation. So for that, you need to have a leave of absence from work. If you can't, there are programs through Employment Insurance Canada that allows you to take time off and still get a small amount of money so you can support yourself while you're doing that.
Also look to friends, family, and community for practical support. Is your housing stable? Who do you know who can provide childcare, shop, maybe cook for you?
A lot of people want to support. They want to show you that you're not alone, that you're cared for, and that the person that was harmed or that you're thinking about or looking for or going to court for, that, they want to show some way that they care and that they're involved.
Many family members participate in community events, vigils, and memorials to honor their loved ones.
Are you here for the ceremony?
The strawberry ceremony at police headquarters in Toronto was first held in 2004 in solidarity with Vancouver's downtown Eastside, where the community has been marching since 1991.
My name is Dancing Star. I come from the Bear Clan. I'm a member of the Mi'kmaq First Nation. And so we recognize that we're on stolen land today, and we've come together to do ceremony.
In their struggle for justice for their loved ones, family members sometimes become activists like Mag, who is part of It Starts With Us, a collaboration between No More Silence, Families of Sisters in Spirit, and the Native Youth Sexual Health Network.
I think you become the biggest advocate for that individual because you want to save their memory and you want to keep who they were alive in a very sacred way.
Families have found solace in community initiatives that honor and memorialize their loved ones.
The tribute pages are so important to families like myself. We're able to share Sonia's life in a positive light. People are able to see her as a child and to see who she was and what she loved to do.
And we have a cultural camp for 4 days leading up to the memorial with a traditional round dance and a candlelight vigil. And it's a part of the healing and restoration that our families and communities need to go through.
Over 4 days, traditional activities take place for children and youth, including media workshops, moose hide tanning, fish scaling, beading, drum making, and stick games. Grief recovery practitioners and healers are available for the families, and an honor dance closes off the ceremony.
There's an energy or a spirit that exists in Indigenous people that is intimately connected to the land that we're on. There is hope in dismantling the system. I think it's absolutely possible. I think that a community-based response is the way that is going to do that.